Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you are hearing us loudly and clearly. We are live streaming on YouTube this afternoon, and I am delighted to be presenting a webinar on unlocking the value of MMC for housing associations and HRAs. My name is Jessie Wild, and I am your chair for this afternoon. I am one of the directors for the Bristol Housing Festival. And just to get a little bit of the admin out of the way, as you'll notice, you're watching this on YouTube rather than being in the Zoom meeting room with us, but you still should have the Q&A function. So in the YouTube chat there, you'll be able to ask any questions that you might like, and they will still make it all the way through to me. So I'll be able to put them in the panel. So do, at any point along the journey of this webinar, do put any questions you might have in that chat box, and I will endeavour to put it to the panel if we have time, if we don't get overrun with lots of different questions. This YouTube, as you can see, this webinar, as you can see, is on YouTube and will remain on YouTube. So once we finish recording this afternoon, you'll be able to access this and watch it back to your heart's content, or send it on to colleagues that you think might be interested. So do just copy and paste that link. If you have not heard of us, the Bristol Housing Festival, we are working within the city to support innovation in building, particularly when it comes to modern methods of construction and MMC. So we all know we face all sorts of different challenges in the city at the moment, and nationally. In fact, when it comes to homes and house building, we know that we have a housing crisis. That's a crisis of availability. That's a crisis of suitability and affordability. But we also face all sorts of other crises around the ecological emergency, the climate crisis, and we know that we're also facing a skills shortage within the construction industry too. So we're looking at a kind of myriad of overlapping, complicated, complex issues to be facing and to be dealing with. We know at the Bristol Housing Festival particularly that MMC is not the silver bullet. MMC is not going to fix all the problems and make them suddenly disappear and go away, but it is a bit of a step change when it comes to delivering homes for both the city, the region and the nation. And we know that it's really going to start to shift and shake up the way we deliver homes, going to shift and shake up the supply chain. And there's some real opportunities when we look at using MMC. So one of our key priorities within the Bristol Housing Festival is to showcase and celebrate some of the really good examples of what's going on in the region when it comes to MMC. And hopefully today you're going to hear a little bit more about why this is important and what's going on there. If you're not already aware, this webinar is part of a series of webinars. It's part of our Workforce for the Future programme, which has specifically been set up to support SMEs to gain exposure to the world of MMC, to modern methods of constructions. So we're working with a company called YTKO and Moby to deliver this project. And the aim is to help SMEs within the built environment to bridge the skills gap between some of the traditional construction and those modern methods of construction, and hopefully just help to upskill those that are interested in the MMC world. MMC is happening, it is coming forward, it is increasing in use, and there's a real opportunity now for SMEs to align with this change, and there is a bit of a risk if they don't, that as MMC comes forward, they're going to miss out on some of those opportunities. So this program, as well as doing a bit of skills and webinars and workshops and things like that, there is grant funding to that end as well. So if you are an SME, if you're in the built environment, you're an SME, you're in the West of England region, and you're interested in some of that grant funding and some of that more training that we're talking about, please do click on the links that will be available in the YouTube description on this video afterwards, and they should be there now as well, and you can follow through and get more information on what is available to those SMEs. But without much further ado, and without too much chat from me, I'd like to move on to the main event of this webinar. So we know that there is increasing pressure in the housing market, as I've said, and we know that MMC might be one of the keys for unlocking that, as I've said, but particularly for housing associations, particularly for HRAs. How does this work? How is this a benefit, and where is the opportunity here? So in this webinar, we're going to hear from Elaine Alford from Bristol City Council, who's the head of housing delivery. We're going to hear from Jake Snell, who's representing Abbury. We're going to hear from Mary Bennell from the South West Procurement Alliance, and we're going to hear from Jim Dyer of Sovereign. I am going to hand over in a moment to Jim, and hopefully we're just going to roll all the way through 4 different presentations, with Mary offering a bit of insight from Paul Reed, who wasn't able to be with us today as well. So she's going to share a little bit on his behalf as well. We'll roll through those presentations and then we'll move into a panel conversation and discussion to sort of dig a little bit further into those issues and the themes that are raised. So as I said, if you do have any questions you would like to ask any of the panelists, do please put them in the YouTube chat and they will come to me and I will be able to put them to the panel after the presentations. But enough from me. Jim, let me hand over to you for your introduction, and then we'll go straight through to Jake, Mary, and then to Elaine. Thanks so much.
Jessie, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting us along today to show you Sovereign's thinking and approach to MMC. Now, could you tell me, can you see this on your screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. 2 seconds.
There we go. It's coming up now.
Okay, thank you. And I'll put that onto presentation mode. So thank you. I need to move the camera somehow. There we go. And so thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. If I could quickly introduce you to Sovereign as a housing association, a business you may be familiar with or not, but clearly a business with a social purpose that drives our thinking and our actions. Broadly speaking, we have 60,000 existing homes across the south of England, and we're targeting a new build programme of about 2,000 homes every year. We recently launched our ESG report in March 22, and we take a holistic approach to sustainability and prioritising health, well-being, affordability, and creating a simple pathway to net zero. And this underpins a lot of our thinking and our approach to house design and sustainability. We've created our own standard that we call the Home and Place Standard, which has its foundations in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But we've created this standard over the course of an 18-month period to allow us to identify new dwellings for the future that are fit for the customer of the future.
Oh, Jim, we've lost your sound. Oh no, it's come back. Sorry, if you could just repeat your last sentence, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. The Home and Place Standard we use to drive design decisions and specification decisions in our new build portfolio. And it's a very prescriptive, but equally strategic approach to designing. And we approach every house design core principles that are important to our customers and that our customers have told us that are important to them. So we look at the house holistically and we try and embed that into the designs that we have in our new house type range. So we prioritize space, light and storage, adaptability, space standards, energy efficiency. And everything we do is about designing for manufacture, but also giving us an option to design traditionally if we have to, but designing for manufacture and embracing MMC on a pathway to net zero. So we recently launched our new house type energy performance standards. And we have therefore gone to the marketplace with this new house type range. It's built predominantly on the chassis principle, where we have a standardized chassis and then we can elevate to suit local vernaculars and local planning needs. But the standardization, the rigor is key. We are a commissioning client and we do want to lead in modernizing home building. And we are able to take a long-term view. And therefore value for money is not just about the cost, the capital cost, it's about the lifetime cost and the value for money. We are targeting higher PMV, and we do recognise and support Homes England in the desire to do so as a strategic delivery partner for them. And we can only succeed if we engage with the supply chain and establish strategic frameworks where that win-win situation works for the supply chain and ourselves. But we have to talk to a supply chain that recognises the same visions and values as we do on our pathway to net zero and the principles within our ESG reporting. And some of the holistic benefits of MMC as it relates to ESG and the importance to a housing association. You may be familiar with the environmental, social, and governance principles. And how does MMC talk to those? Well, we believe that reducing the environmental impact is absolutely crucial, and that informs our material choices and energy performance. And there are obviously some other familiar benefits you'll see here about waste reduction, about driving higher quality, controlled environments. But a new way of manufacturing recognises the current workforce and the current challenges in the workforce and the supply chain. So how do we introduce new, clean and tidy environments to drive quality up and reduce health and safety risks? How does this MMC opportunity drive diversity into the workforce that may not exist at the moment? And from the customer's perception, increasing predictability, improving quality and performance and completion dates. And in governance terms, it's very important from an HRA's point of view to demonstrate measurable pathways and auditing each step along the way. So by creating and investing in MMC, we invest in repeatable processes, standardized processes, where we can audit and trace procurement decisions and deliverability, but also the performance outcomes, because we have to demonstrate that we achieved our carbon targets that we said we set out to achieve. So it's about the investment into digital platforms, modern methods of construction to kind of recognize the direction of travel in the ESG landscape. Some other broad benefits to an HA with regards to added value. And this really comes from the ability to guarantee delivery and improve delivery times. And therefore there will be interest benefits by way of reduced construction programs. And that will accelerate income streams for housing associations, where we can move tenants in quicker, perhaps than traditional construction methodologies. We can explore revenue savings and retained income opportunities should they exist. So MMC gives us tremendous flexibility to improve commercial efficiency and revenue streams. Holistically, and just to finish, everything we do is looking at the 30-year plus timeframe. So the decisions we make are based on operational carbon decisions now and embodied carbon decisions of our supply chain. Thank you very much.
It's me next. So hi everyone, and thanks for that, Jim. That was really interesting. I think what you'll see from I haven't got any slides, but my presentation is there's some synergies between myself and our ABRIs and Sovereign's kind of thinking on MMC. So my name's Jake Snell. I'm the head of partnerships and innovation at ABRI. I'm here to talk about housing associations' perspective on the opportunities and values for and in embracing and delivering MMC and what we are currently doing in that space. So ABRI are one of the Southern England's largest HRAs. We have around 40,000 homes servicing about 80,000 residents. Our development strategy is to deliver 12,500 homes by 2030. And of that, 25% will be using modern methods of construction. So in terms of that 25%, we've started on our journey already. We've already procured 125 Category 1 homes from Ilka Homes with the developer Keepmoat, and we've built them in Highbridge in Somerset. We've already had some excellent feedback from customers moving in, including rented and shared ownership. So some really, really positive sort of feedback. We've also set up a strategic with a company called Boklok. Boklok are a Swedish organisation owned by Skanska and IKEA, and they're a Category 1 provider as well. And we're looking to work in partnership to deliver 750 homes together over the next 5 years. And we're also a member of the Building Better consortium. A couple of years ago, we took another consortium that we work with, Advantage Southwest, into Building Better. And there we are a board member. I also work on the working group as well as the management team, and pay some resource in on a kind of weekly basis, really, to help support the consortium. The consortium is a group of 30 like-minded housing associations and local authorities, and that number's growing. And the idea behind Building Better is that we work in collaboration to create the space to navigate some of the barriers and enable MMC at scale and bring together an aggregated pipeline. We've already launched a Category 1 framework, and that went live at the end of summer last year, very unique to the market, where it's a direct call-off function. So that means that we know the costs above ground, and there's an open book approach below ground. 3 partners, Top Hat, ILCA and Impact, are on that. And we are going to launch our Category 2 DPS. So it's not framework, it's a DPS for Category 2, because we saw that as the best solution currently, and that's going to launch in May. So some really exciting sort of times from that perspective. I'll talk a little bit about some of the barriers and some of the opportunities now. And Jesse's actually already mentioned some of the barriers, and as did Jim, and I won't go into too much more detail about the trades and the quality, because I think that's been handled really well. What I can say, and it's interesting actually, so some of those opportunities we look to increase the speed of delivery. Feedback actually is telling us that timescales are not quite as promised quite yet. And they see the link between the pace of delivery from the factory and the on-site is not, the synergy's not quite there yet. But the more that it's enabled, the more that it drives, we will really sort of see the benefits coming to fruition. And of course, I think we already know that there's still not enough hard, compelling evidence on the quality and long-term reduction of downstream maintenance. And again, once that work is in play, and we're currently doing some work with Cambridge University on that, but once that work is in play, that's going to create some really positive sort of step changes as well. But I guess, and this is where the synergies are really interesting with what Jim just said. So the opportunities that we're certainly saying, and the feedback that we're receiving, we're focusing, or there's a focus towards 3 key arguments that really help drive MMC towards really, and that's sustainability. So most HRAs are using improved environmental performance as their key business and strategic driver. The upfront costs appear to be coming down, and that's relative to how they've been stacked up previously, given the volume, and as well as comparing that against traditional costs as well. Certainly when we look to those more high performing kind of models like the Future Home Standards. And then, as Jim said, that diversification in the industry, I think it's pretty apparent how fragile this sector is, and we're very worried about how we can find solutions that are actually going to navigate that. And we absolutely see that MMC is fundamental in that space to really diversify the construction industry. So that's it from me. And I think finding some of these longer term solutions is really fundamental to helping deliver the homes that we need. And I look forward to discussing in a bit more detail shortly. I think over to Mary next.
Yes, thank you, Jake. Yes, and thank you, Jim, as well, because what I was asked to do was, as a provider of procurement solutions, to sort of give a bit of an overview of what I'm seeing in the market. So just to introduce myself, my name's Mary Bennell, and I'm Director of South West Procurement Alliance. We're the regional arm of LHC, and we do offer a couple of procurement solutions for off-site, and we also have a traditional house building framework. So my views are very much what I'm seeing through engaging with clients throughout the years in which I've been employed by South West Procurement Alliance. I've been there since 2018, and 2019, May 2019 was when we launched our framework for off-site construction of new homes, and which I'll talk about a bit later. And also we've just launched, literally in March, a DPS, low carbon MMC DPS, which I will talk about again. But just in terms of what I was going to whiz through quickly with you was what our perception is of what clients want from the MMC sector, what suppliers want, the supply market, and I think Jake has referred to how fragile and fast moving that is, and I'll certainly talk a bit about that. And then I was going to talk a bit about the two solutions we have to procurement and how they very much align with some of the other solutions out there, but I won't go into great detail. So we've been engaging with clients since we launched the framework in 2019, off-site construction new homes, and it has a modular option, category 1, and it has a panelised option, category 2. Some of the things that clients want and what they want out of MMC, and 2019 was quite a long time ago, but we're still seeing it today, is they want something that's simple to use. MMC is a whole new way of working for a lot of clients, and is quite a different way of working in terms of early engagement with suppliers. But they want it to be a simple solution, and they want it to be, the way it works to be very visible. How does it work? How do I call off? How do I work with these suppliers? And they want it to be viable. They don't suddenly want to find out that their supplier is having financial difficulties, and that has happened, or gone out of business in a number of cases. So the other thing that the clients definitely want is to know that there are some accreditations and assurances behind the suppliers. BOPAS, and just recently the NHBC accepts, is becoming much more important when clients are wanting to use MMC for shared ownership or outright sale. But as I say, those are some very, usually some sort of line in the sand requirements. There's been a lot of debate with clients about, and clients initially wanting a full turnkey solution, with their modular homes. But what has happened is it has become apparent that in some cases it's good to split that out, to have your supplier, your modular supply, and then have a principal contractor to deliver the groundworks and to take on the finishing works. And that has worked with a number of people. It does introduce some contractual complexities, and there are always the complexities of integration between the supplier and the principal contractor, which need to be acknowledged and then talked about very honestly. So there have been some painful journeys for our clients, and journeys of discovery. And I would say that probably Jim and Jake would agree that early projects have always been quite challenging for our clients. We've had to work very closely with them, and they're appointed experts and consultants, but things seem to be getting a bit easier now. What do suppliers want from the market? Well, they want a pipeline. If you listen, one of the reasons for the volatility of the supply market has been, and why there have been a number of failures, is because clients, because of their nervousness, have found it very hard to commit to more than just one-off small projects. And I have talked in the past about the curse of the pilot. And it's becoming better. Clients understand, but there is, they need clients do need the confidence that they are going to get a high quality product, and it's going to be delivered when and where they expect it. They also, what the larger, although a lot of suppliers will say, yes, we will do whatever design you want. If you're using a manufacturing process, you really want standardization, and you want some standardization of types, house types and modules. That really makes your life easier and makes your products more viable. So yes, from suppliers' point of view, it's standardization and aggregation. What about the supply market? Well, it's a vast sort of spectrum at the moment, from a man in a shed constructing a module, right up to some highly automated systems with large people. I've got a couple of pictures here. Let me see if I can share some of the suppliers. Let me just see if I can get them up for you, just to show you what I mean. Share screen. Let me see if I can get it. Here we are. Let's just open this up and get myself onto presentation mode. I'm not going to get, hang on, I'm nearly there on presentation mode. Yes, we are there. Let me just whiz through, because here we are. So man in a shed. This is a really interesting one. These are called, some people in Gloucester just setting up, called MMC Modular, and what they're doing is they're setting up a facility for prisoners coming out on day release to build 1-bed modules that they will then use as housing. They've got some land from the church to do it, but this is the sort of the start of a supplier of MMC. You then go on to well, this is BT Passive. They're doing move on accommodation for people this is in Cardiff, for homeless people in Cardiff, and they've got a big contract there for accommodation and support units. And then this is probably the more sophisticated end. What's interesting about these people is this is Stelling Properties, who've been doing student accommodation, modular accommodation for many years, and are now doing modules for move on accommodation themselves. The picture on the right was of their huge machine that moves the modules around. It's just fantastic. But you know, this is sort of taking you, as I say, from somebody in a shed up to some quite sophisticated assembly line processes. There are bigger ones, but these are just some of the volatility in the market and what's happening there. So as I say, the market is very volatile. There's lots coming on. There are sadly lots going out. So what sort of solutions are there for procurement? Well, as I've mentioned, we have a DPS. We have a DPS that we've constructed and launched in consultation with Bristol Housing Festival and YTKO, and what it has in it is an optioneering tool, and this plays to that very volatile supply market, because what it does is it allows people to enter and join in the solution, suppliers to join in, and provides suppliers with an accessible, route to public sector procurement, which is good. And as a Cornwall Council are very keen to use this solution, and I wanted to go first for move on accommodation. And it seems like a lot of clients are potentially interested in the modular solution for that, although the DPS can do everything. The other solution which plays to the demand aggregation is the framework. And what we've been doing is, in conjunction with Magna, we've been putting together as a solution, what we call a cluster concept, and we've done a mini competition off our New Homes 2 framework. What we've done is we've badged this up easy as 1, 2, 3, because what it comes with is a portfolio of designs, very attractive designs. We did a great YouTube video. It looks like a normal house, but they're all based on standardized components. And this is the other thing, as I say, that plays into the suppliers' requirements for standardization. So you have a portfolio of designs and specifications. And as I say, that is a set of standardized specifications and components. And I think Jim talked about the sovereign solution, which is very much that. And it goes all the way up from different levels of energy efficiency right up to carbon negative. So that we've been working on and developed that. And as I say, we've procured 1,000 homes over 3 years for 2 clients, for Magna and Wiltshire. I think that's those are that's my bit on sort of procurement solutions and my overview of the market. The other bit I want to talk to you about is, I'm going to try and get out of this one, and just Paul Reed, who's not with us today, but as I say, Magna Housing were one of the people who are part of the cluster. He just wanted me to talk a bit about their journey to MMC, and why they're adopting the MMC route so much. So let me just do this. So Magna Housing, hats off to them. They've adopted an MMC first approach. Just go back. Yeah. And they've invested in MMC. And yes, what's happened with them, and I think this is really interesting, is that the board have made this commitment to MMC in 2017-18. And what they've done is they did an external review of their asset management and looked at MMC as part of the whole system of asset management for their stock, and looked at why MMC would be better for them. And they did a mini competition through our framework and engaged Roll Along for a proof of concept. So what they've done is they've looked at MMC, they've been working with MMC, and they're now looking at the business case for MMC. And that is the business case. They then have done the manufacture, delivery and integration with site teams. And they're looking now at the customer experience and occupation. They're now buying land in the open market, and they're procuring for value. And I think, mention's been made of the costs and the cost difference between MMC and traditional. We have been doing, as part of the cluster procurement, we have been doing a lot of analysis and comparison of the current MMC specification against traditional, and it's working out, much the same. It is the same, really. So, they want to expand their collaboration with clients and the cluster collaboration. And they're looking at MMC plus, delivering works, delivering the social value. We did, on the mini competition, we did a lot of work on social value and looking at it and delivering net zero on those. So that's the end of what I've got to say. As I say, it's all there. It's all in the mix. So over to you, Elaine.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. So hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Alford, Head of Housing Delivery at Bristol City Council, and I'm going to talk a bit about MMC from a Bristol City Council point of view. So Bristol City Council has shown it has a real appetite to use innovation and learning in the delivery of its affordable housing programme. And our experience and interest in using MMC has certainly gathered pace over the last few years. However, it hasn't been an easy journey, but it has been a positive learning experience for us. Working with Innovate UK and the Bristol Housing Festival, we were able to set up and support demonstrator sites across the city. The sites vary in size from one new home to considerably larger sites of over 100 new homes with Booklook and L&G Modular. The sites also vary in their delivery models, with some as community-led housing, some as registered provider delivery, some private sale, and a number of sites have been earmarked as HRA delivery, so that's new council homes. This has given us a variety of case studies across the whole city that could run in parallel. It also proved that MMC could work across housing delivery in the city and didn't have to be allocated to one specific funding model, delivery route, or tenure. So we all know about the benefits of MMC in theory: improved building performance, reduced on-site waste and life cycle carbon reduction, which responds to the climate emergency, lower running costs for end users that helps address fuel poverty, standardization, and of course, speed of delivery on site. But MMC can be a scary place for local authorities who haven't used it before. Pilot projects, as Mary mentioned, are often seen as something out to the left that have a life of their own, and often there is an assumption that they won't find their way into mainstream delivery programs. Another factor is also that MMC is generally or perceived as more expensive than traditional construction methods. MMC is feared sometimes because of this, maybe avoided as well. This will not change until the technology and the conversations around MMC mature, and that's what today is part of that whole conversation. Unless the construction industry begins to understand the technology and the benefits and also takes it to its heart, I am confident that this will happen and the benefits will be seen and felt by all. It just might take a little bit of time, but we are moving things forward, and that's really positive. So Bristol's Council Home Programme has a number of sites at various stages and scales that will be delivered by MMC. Bristol has a new build project programme of around 1,500 new council homes, and those are new build. From this programme, we expect the number of MMC projects to grow. We've only got a few at the moment, as we mature our own conversations within the council around the cost of construction and what we think value is and what we deem value to be, onboarding new technologies, and how we get to grips with the management and maintenance of those new technologies within the new homes. We have also learned a lot over the last few years, working with colleagues both inside and outside the council. And we have a lot to learn. As an industry, we have a lot to learn, but also within the council, we have a lot to learn. And no doubt there will be bumps and turns and stops along the road till we understand the technology, the processes that get us there, and the actual buildings themselves. But that continued exploration and use of MMC within our HRAs, so our new council homes build programme, it is important to us as an authority, providing, you know, we're proving actually to the wider housing industry that it can be done, it is affordable, and there are many more resultant benefits from MMC than a traditional build. So that's just my quick overview and synopsis from a Bristol City Council point of view. So I'm now going to hand back to Jessie.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you so much, Mary, Jim and Jake as well. There's really interesting insights and some interesting fodder for our following conversation. Just as a reminder, if you are watching us and following this on YouTube, there is a comments box below that you can type any of questions you might have for any of the panelists, and they will come through to me and I will be able to put them to the panel. So do pop your questions in there. But before we sort of get into questions, I just sort of wanted to open the floor really to see if anybody had any questions, one for another, or wanted to comment on each other's presentations. Particularly, I was aware that there was a lot of overlap. So where people might have seen kind of overlapping themes or things that you have seen that one person's doing that another person's also doing, where you maybe there are lessons that have been learnt that you might want to draw from. This is a little bit of the opportunity really to kind of open the floor and see where the comparisons are really helpful, or where actually they're totally different. It'd be interesting to tease out some of those similarities and differences really. So yeah, just an open floor really to anybody to kind of comment on any of those things on each other's presentation.
Okay, I'll jump in. I guess the area that's really kind of quite exciting, I suppose, is that post-occupancy evaluations really, and there is limited data. And you know, the various forums and networks that we're all in, it's quite apparent that there's that data is not there quite yet. And it's about how do we share what data we've got and collectively do that. And I just wonder, in this space, are people working on that? Are they working towards that? Have they got data that they've started to review? And how can we sort of share that, and how can we move that forward? I mentioned in my piece we're doing some work with Cambridge University, and you know, that's very much the start of a really interesting journey there. But we're at the start. You know, as I mentioned, we've got some homes that have been delivered, and we're going to do some reviews on that and some customer insight. But yeah, it'd be great to get people's views really.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting, Jake, because as we've been doing more and more stuff with MMC ourselves and working with different companies that are actually building out using MMC, the question around data collection, the question about lessons learned is really important, and has come up in various different presentations here as well around the sort of supply chains. And actually somebody talked about actually those upfront costs starting to come down, and that comes from the maturing of the supply chain. So this is a really essential part of that conversation. So would love to hear from anybody actually on Jake's question, where people are starting to collect that data, collating lessons learned and that kind of thing.
Certainly from Sovereign's point of view, Jake, we absolutely agree that, you know, data capture and lessons learned and customer feedback is crucial. We are not as progressed as you are with respect to that research piece, but we absolutely believe that digital investment, digital measurement, performance and use evaluation informs greater efficiencies, which goes back into the cycle of improvement, which starts to lead innovation, which hopefully, drives better outcomes. So absolutely agree with that. And this applies into retrofit very much as well as it does new build digital investment. The other common theme, perhaps, that I recognize across everyone is the success of MMC is down to partnerships and pipeline and strategic thinking, as opposed to what's the long-term opportunity rather than the short-term cost, and engaging with manufacturers who are on the same page, who are pointing in the same direction, who you can invest in them and they can invest in you. You can see that as a long-term opportunity. I think that's going to be even more important going forward as the market is challenged and workforce is challenged and pipeline isn't there perhaps for manufacturers. So it's a key strategic thing is procurement, strategic procurement and frameworks.
Yeah, yes. Just on the point of measuring performance, I think it's always an interesting question, that I get asked, when I'm putting forward solutions, is how well does MMC perform? And like Jake and Jim, I have to say, well, it's very early days yet. We haven't got the performance data yet. Often these buildings are only 2 years in the making, but certainly I think we do need to start gathering that information and providing that information, and particularly at the moment around some of the energy performance. They're all constructed, usually the homes, there's a big focus on zero carbon or carbon negative, but we really need to look at that data in the context of the current rising prices going forward. So that's certainly something that we would be interested in, scooping up the data from the people that are delivering projects through our frameworks. Yeah.
The questions that you ask as well, isn't it? So you need to ask questions that actually show you the benefits of MMC, and that's the challenge, isn't it? Because in a house, the performance measures can be the same as in a traditional house as they can in MMC. So what's some really interesting kind of measures that you can look to receive or to work on that gives you that's because it's MMC, or that's because it's traditional. So we know about the assumptions of their speed of delivery when there's more maturity and unknown kind of pace in the marketplace. So I guess it's the sort of the as-built. So there's some work that's been done on traditional built that sort of says, well, the as-built suggest the performance measures of this, but actually when we go around and scrutinize that, the insulation's not there. This is missing. This is missing. Where actually the MMC world, where it's quality measured throughout a factory, can actually represent that. But again, testing that when it's landed on site, I think is going to be really, really valuable. But we need to measure the apples against apples, and that's the crux, I think, that we're kind of exploring at the moment. So if you're building I guess we're looking at it with M3 housing and on our appraisal modeling, that if we're going to measure this, we've got to measure that, as I say, apples and apples. So let's look at future home standards and how can traditional do that and against MMC, and then how can we measure against off the two? Because measure anything against each other, and if they're different, there's always an argument. And how can you remove some of the or get clarity, I suppose, with what you're measuring?
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting issue that I just want to sort of stick on a moment and tease out a little bit more, because when you're moving to sort of a new way of doing things, and we could debate what I mean by new and whether MMC really is new or not, but let's put a pin in that one for now. Let's call it new. When you're moving to a sort of a less well used model or type of development or type of building, it comes with some element of risk to be using new technology or new processes or even new procedures, perhaps. And Elaine, maybe you could answer this question to start with before we open it up wider. But I suppose when you're looking at when you're looking at new technology, when you're trying to prove something, and the maturity of the supply chain is only going to come when we're using MMC, because that will drive that maturity, and we're starting to see that a little bit already, but it's slow progress. How do you balance, as different organizations, that kind of level of, well, we know that it's good and we know that it has the potential, but we're yet to really put the data and the figures and the numbers solidly and really back it up behind that. How do you start to make those decisions about which typologies you're going to use, whether you're going to stick with what you know, which we know has problems, it's not by any stretch perfect, or are we going to try something and take a risk on something new? Is it better the devil we know? How do you balance those decisions?
So for us, the benefit we had was we were working with yourselves and Innovate UK, so we could have demonstrator projects, some managed by us and some built by others. And what it did was it allowed us to test different methodologies to get us through procurement, for instance, but also different methodologies around the construction of those homes. And we didn't have to pin our tail to one particular method or MMC manufacturer. So we could look at them all. We inherently know what the benefits are. Yes, we may not have the data, but because we're living in a world where we've got an environmental and climate emergency, we know what the aspiration is. We know we're heading towards that carbon zero or carbon negative build. We want to be able to address fuel poverty, especially now with everything that's going on. So we know what the answer is. We know what the end answer is, and it's just a case of keep trying until we find it. And through building an MMC and that post occupancy evaluation, we'll figure out as an industry what it is, what the right answer is. And one size won't fit all. This is construction. There are no two sites that are exactly the same. But the benefit we have is these technologies are emerging. They will mature. Some will fall away and others will come up, and they will take all the learning from other technologies, put it together, and it will be maybe, like you say, the silver bullet. We might be really lucky and find one that is absolutely fantastic. So for us, it's that trial and error. But I think what's more important than that is actually the aspiration and gathering people with you, that momentum. Why are we doing it? What are we doing it for? And keeping that in the fore of people's minds, so they don't look back at what we were doing and say, but that's what we were doing. That's what we know. That's what's safe. Let's just stick with that. We know how to put an outside tap on. We know how to put a satellite dish on the roof. We know how to change the kitchen. There is a real fear to hang on, there's a real fear, and we want to hang on to the past, but we must be brave. And Bristol is being brave. There are always naysayers, but you have to sometimes just drown them out and push forward to the future. See what the prize that is the future and head towards it. So that's what we're hopefully doing.
That's really good. And Jim, you mentioned that you're looking for DFMA, planning for DFMA on everything. And Jake, you talked about a 25% MMC, and Mary, on behalf of Paul, you were talking about an MMC first approach. How I don't know who wants to jump in first, but how do you manage that risk and decide which ones are the right ones to go MMC or not, or what have you?
Well, if I could jump in then. So Sovereign, just to clarify, our Homes England, we're strategic partners with Homes England, and 35% of that pipeline will be MMC category 2. So that's where we arrived at with Homes England. But the decision to go with category 2 for us is one of pragmatism. We have to find a system that is deliverable at scale, adaptable, and can work with the house types that we've created, that gives us as much value in a less risky way, if you want to say that, as opposed to trialing new innovations, new technologies, new systems. Well, warranty providers won't like that. Mortgage providers won't like that. So we have to find a sweet spot. And as a business, we think there's scale opportunities at category 2, closed panel timber frame for Sovereign. That doesn't mean other systems won't be suitable. And I think different projects have different needs. So there might be a category 1 need in a different project, but for scalability, therefore commerciality, we have to find that pragmatic place, and that's where we landed. And as you said, Jesse, is it new? Where I come from, they've been building timber frame for 40 years, and it's not called MMC, it's just called timber frame homes, you know. So I think there's an awful lot of, sometimes a lot of noise around it, and it's a well-tried technology, very well quality controlled, but moving into category 2 gives you more value and quality opportunities.
Yeah, that's good. And Jake, oh, go on, Mary.
I was just fascinated, Jim, because when you were showing your standard designs, I thought they were category 1. So really, really interesting that you explained that further. I think one of the things, you know, working with Magna, one of the reasons, you know, the business case for them moving to modular was the amount of defects in traditional building. And that's why they wanted to go down the off-site manufacturing route. And really the value and the values, you do have to focus on the whole life costing values. I think people still get hung up on cost, you know, cost of construction. And as I said, and I think Jake said, you know, they are finding comparable costs, but I think we have to think about the added value, and the added value we now get from offsite in terms of the carbon neutral, the carbon efficiency and the quality. And as Jake says, the deliverability and the timescales are going to come, but it is a challenge at the moment in getting those going. I mean, one of the things that Magna's done, I'm just going to shut up in a minute, is that they've built to stock. So they have, sitting in their partner manufacturers building, they have premises, they have a considerable amount of modules ready to go when they've got the planning permission for these sites. And that's a very interesting solution that they are developing. But I'll shut up now and let Jake speak.
I think, yeah, it's just really interesting. I guess there's so many solutions out there, and it's kind of pinning your flag to the mast a little bit of where you're going to sort of sit. And I guess from our perspective, some of the work certainly that we've done with Building Better and prior to that with ASW was sort of understanding what, I guess we've created what we call our red lines. So what do our lenders need? What's the minimum requirement? What do we want to strive for? What do we want to achieve? And there's a fundamental kind of thing that's jumping at me, and it's about maximizing PMV, or pre-manufactured value. So I think you're right, Jim, the MMC acronym needs to kind of be pushed away a little bit, and pre-manufactured value needs to come in, because that answers the real exam question. We haven't got enough staff, we tradespeople on site, we haven't got that skill. So how can we maximize, you know, what can be done and managed and reviewed and quality checked off-site and brought to site and assembled? And I think that's sort of the key to it, is about maximizing PMV. And of course, the volumetric solution does offer a huge kind of percentage in that space. Likewise, so does sort of the panelized solutions, depending on how complete they are. But you can also derive some social value from the panelized solution, because you're going to bring in some labour from around the sort of the local areas, which is also a real kind of positive. I guess from an ABRI perspective, we are looking to we're looking on different sites really. What site represents a good kind of solution? So, you know, the more flatter sites, the closer to a decent kind of road is going to be, you know, more lend itself more to that category 1 solution. And as I said, this red line thing that I've we've discussed is through Building Better. We created a very high level criteria that says you have to achieve X, Y, and Z. That being, you have to have a warranty-backed accreditation of 60 or plus years. You have to have a nationally described state standard as a standard. You have to be better in terms of your thermal performance, etc., etc., etc. No fossil burning fuel, etc. So we've kind of said, well, that's the sort of solution over here, and if you can provide that and do that, including a turnkey solution for that category 1, certainly. But as Mary said, it seems to be moving away a little bit in terms of the turnkey, because there's some challenges there, especially on the smaller sites. But we're going to look to maximize, I guess, the category 2 from our in-house build team, because we see We've got real great construction management skills in our construction management team, and actually having an approved supplier that does the superstructure, what a great fit. You know, you can bring those sort of parties together. So you've got to find the right players, you've got to find the right partners, and you can start really maximizing that kind of circular kind of feedback. And we are. So we're not pinning our flags to the mast and saying we're just going to do this or just going to do that, but you also have to be conscious that you don't want to have a myriad of different partners, and how do we kind of enable that? And it's a bit of a beauty, and the idea behind the category 1 framework we're building Better is there's only 3 main providers of Cat 1, so there's not 20 or 30, and there'll be more for category 2 because that's a slightly different solution, but actually that feedback loop can work, and we can really hone those relationships.
Brilliant. Well, we are very, very rapidly running out of time, which is, it feels like we've only just started to get into the conversation part of this webinar, but we are completely running out of time. So I want to come to each of you just thinking ahead into the next 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. The title of this webinar is Unlocking the Value of MMC for Housing Associations and HRAs. So thinking forward, thinking to the next sort of few decades, what is going to be the real value of MMC or pre-manufactured value for your industries, for the housing associations and for the HRA? Just while you have a moment to think about that, I'm looking for your top answer, 20 seconds each. Just while you have a moment to think about that, I just want to thank everybody on the panel for being involved today. It's been really lovely to have you. I want to thank you, everybody that's been watching on YouTube. And if you're watching this later down the line or watching this as a rerun, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm sorry you haven't been able to ask any questions, but do get in touch. You will see, you can find all the Housing Festival's contact details on our website. If you want to ask any questions directly, it's hello@bristolhousingfestival.org.uk. And I also just want to thank you so much to Workforce for the Future, the funding that's enabling this webinar series, to making this possible. And don't forget to check out all the links on our webpage about the Workforce for the Future funding programme and the grant funding for SMEs to get more training around MMC. So do look that up, because that is available and it won't be around forever. So do check that out. So finally, just to wrap up, let me come to each of you in turn. I'm looking for a 20-second answer just on what you think, looking forward, what is the biggest sort of value add of MMC for your industry, for your organisation? Jake, let me come to you first.
No pressure. I think it's really exciting. I think, I guess we look at ourselves as custodians, really, of where we are and what we're trying to do. And nobody's going to do this apart from the people kind of around this table and listening, et cetera, and actually how exciting and how kind of fun that can be. But people are not going to change. It hasn't changed for a long, long time. So actually enabling and making that change and driving that, I think is really exciting. So, you want to look back in 20 and 40 years and say, we were a part of that. We enabled that. We drove that, and it was hard, but we got there.
Brilliant. And Jim?
I would hope that it becomes mainstream, and that in doing so, we deliver houses that are high performing, high quality, and affordable for our customers to live in. High performance, absolutely, health and well-being, that's all possible. And in how we procure and build these, really addressing the climate crisis and the whole life carbon impacts, operational and embodied, that's absolutely crucial.
Brilliant. Elaine?
I think it's really exciting. And when we get to a point where the conversations have matured and we understand what value is, we've been able to quantify all those benefits, those whole life costings, the end user costs, the maintenance and management, but also the acceleration, so the pace is there. So we say we get planning one day and pretty much we've got trucks coming the next day, or men digging holes ready for the trucks the next week.
And women.
Yeah, that's where we need to be, instead of this really long lead-in time that we have at the minute because we're not quite sure and we have to get it right. So once that's happening, I think we'll feel confident as an industry. It will only ever gather pace. And then, you know, for an HRA, it's about housing people in need. It's about doing it fast. It's about quality homes that will stand the test of time, and those climate and ecological emergencies as well, and addressing that. So for us, it's a whole package, but I'm really excited about, you know, moving this all forward.
Brilliant. And last but not least, Mary.
Ah, yes, a bit of a challenge. Well, for me, my vision would be having that supermarket there, that hypermarket there, that could deliver those trucks with the houses and the panels on them to you the next day, Elaine. And also the foundation solutions. So I think we're getting there. And I think one of the things is, you know, we can deliver modules on trucks these days, but they don't look very attractive. So I think it's having those really attractive, flexible designed solutions that can be in that hypermarket to deliver to you and provide residents who in urgent housing need with comfortable, warm, high quality homes. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great afternoon.